I focus on helping people release trauma and be able to learn, give them tools so that they can navigate daily life more comfortably and effectively. And we have equine-assisted trauma releasement, for instance. We do horse-guided hypnotherapy. And we have a whole collection of other things that we offer. We have an 8-week program. I was the original provider for Eagle County's Health and Human Services for the veterans programs and for the children's programs. And we've had great success with them. And I'm going to just go ahead and stop talking about myself there, continue adding on, and look forward to all of you guys' questions.
Thanks, Alex. Good morning, everyone. Michelle Kay, the founder and executive director of Operation Equine. I've been working with the military and veteran community since 2011. Once I started working with the veterans and their families, I never looked back. It's a community that I absolutely love to serve, and as a civilian, I'm very proud to serve those who have served and to serve their families. So we've got 3 pillars of how we serve. So we work with individuals and families and groups, and then we also work with the organizations that also serve those communities. So we've worked with Warrior Now, we work with the Aurora Fire Department, their peer support team, the Denver Police Department, their peer support team. So being able to serve the organizations who also either are a part of that community or who serve that community is also a way we love to give back. And then our 3rd pillar is we have the Warrior Pack Trip program. And so that's a unique program that we offer that takes the best of what we do on the ground, the equine therapy services, and then we take it out into the backcountry. So we go out into the wilderness. It's a 6-day program. Eventually we'll be able to get everybody. We'll be able to get the veterans and their spouses and their kids and the family. That's a work in progress, as always. And so Warrior is actually an acronym that we're really proud of that we created because all of the principles for that program are surrounded around that acronym, and of course it's a military, so everything has to have an acronym, of course. So Warrior stands for wisdom, acceptance, and accountability. The R's are all interchangeable, so they might change direction, but the R is relationships with self, with others, and with nature. Respect for self, for others, and for nature. I is integrity. O is own your impact. And R is, did I say relationships, respect? Oh, and responsibility for self, for others, and for nature. And the reason why I also make sure that we put those 3 things in there, self and others and nature, is that when we're in a healing place, sometimes we can get really in ourselves. We can forget that there's this whole world out there, and we can get really narrowly focused. And so sometimes in the healing process, if we can also remember that our healing not only affects us, it affects our families. It affects our animals. It affects the people around us. And then also doing the work that we do, huge, obviously, they're horses, so a lot of that is outside and being in nature. And so just to see people's faces sometimes when they get out to the ranch and all of a sudden there's no buildings and they see the blue sky and there's aromatherapy of the animals and the horses and the hay and the dirt and the rain and the metal gates. And just watching people's faces relax and seeing their shoulders come down, it's a great place to start. So also being able to include that Warrior Pack Trip and the nature part of what we do is also huge because we use a lot of mindfulness-based and nature-based work in our work with the veterans, with the emergency responders, and with the horses. The mindfulness-based skills and tools, it's not just meant to be in the barn and with the horse. It's being able to rewire our nervous systems, and this is something I know we'll all talk about as the panel gets really talking about things, but being able to, horses are wonderful for helping us downregulate our nervous systems, because when we're all jacked up, you know, we've had too much coffee and we're agenda-based and all that, we get into our horses and they're like, whoa, I don't want to have anything to do with you. You all need to ground first and then come hang out with me. So it's a good reminder, right, when we see our horses and we're like, whoa, cool your jet, sister, and then be able to come to us. So when our veterans especially, who think that, you know, they come in and, you know, sometimes the jaw is clenched and they've got the stature coming in, and so to be able to see for them immediately how that horse reacts to them or how that horse responds to them, and all you have to do sometimes is lean over and say, take a deep breath for a second, just do me a favor, just breathe. So they breathe and they exhale. And then the horse starts licking and chewing, and then the horse trots on back and decides that they want to hang out with us. So being able to see that in real time, and again, we'll be talking more on the panel about why horses, but that's one of the main reasons, one of the many main reasons, to be able, that the horses affect the veterans and our first responders and their families really deeply. The other thing that I'll just say about Operation Equine, and then pass it along here too, is we're locally based. We work out of 2 different barns right now, one up in Erie at Allegiance Ranch and Rescue, and the other one down in Parker at Praying Hands Ranch. So being able to be in those 2 locations allows us to be able to serve the north end and also the south end. And that is where I think I will pause for now and hand it over to Amanda.
Beautiful. And I can't wait to go on the Warrior Pack trip. I'm like going for sure. So thank you. And that's beautiful. I don't know if I've heard you say all that before. So
I've had coffee.
coffee is everything. All right. My name is Amanda Held. I feel like I'm eating this microphone. I am the founder and executive director of Hooves. I'm also still serving in the Michigan Air National Guard, so I have 21 years of service. I just became the new human resources advisor for the 110th Wing, so hopefully I'll put on my senior stripe next month when I go to drill, so that's really exciting. But in 2010, I struggled. I was on active duty. When I got out of active duty, I couldn't cope. Nobody ever taught me how to transition and go back to the civilian world. And I found myself hospitalized after a suicide attempt that was unsuccessful. I was medicated out of my mind, and I was told I would never be fully functioning. And so that's a lot to hear from a doctor, who we really respect to the medical field. And I just remember, like, I was sitting in the chair, and I remember the cold plastic handles of the chair, and I was like, what do you mean I'm treatment resistant? Like, what even is that? And how can you tell me, how can you put a label on my healing? How can you tell me that I'm not going to be functioning? And, it was really that, like, anger and that frustration that made me say, like, no, I'm going to find a way to heal. I'm not going to let you put a label on me. And I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to do something. And I just kind of remember, like, telling God, like, okay, God, if you want to keep me here, then you need to help me and show me the way, right? And, it was a little mean to God, but, he doesn't care. And he just started opening these doors to nature and to holistic services, and I will never knock anything, because I like to say there are many paths to the sun, and we can all, we all have our own unique journey to healing. But for me, I was shown work with energy, and it's funny when I give talks not to horse people, I always say, I got this Mustang, this Shelby Mustang, and I'm not talking about a car. I'm talking about a horse. But that horsepower to me was everything. And as you hear all of our stories, you find this interconnectedness of when you go to be with a wild horse, your thoughts are yelling at them. And in order for them to engage with you, you have to enter this special state. And we've learned so much. This has been 20 years ago when I got Shelby, but we've learned so much, and we've advanced so much in science to learn that, when I got Shelby, I didn't necessarily want to be here anymore, and that was really scary. But she gave me hope. And I know that it only takes 10 seconds without hope to start thinking about taking your life. And so even though, and Randy's sermon, like your sermon hit, like it hit today, because I didn't know what I was going to do, but I know every day I could go to that barn, and like Jeff said yesterday, like I had hope to get to the next day. And what I didn't realize at the time is that every day I was taking control over my nervous system, and I was putting myself in that emotional state of present, and I was actually reprogramming my brain and rewiring my brain for connection. And it started to spill out in the other areas of my life. And so that's just a small part of my healing journey. But after I got through the darkness and I got through the other side, I was like, everybody needs this. Every walking person on the planet needs to spend time with a horse. Like, I've got to get the word out. And I I started this nonprofit called Riverbend Equine Therapy, and I put out a press release, and I just thought everybody was going to show up at my door. And well, that was delusional. But then I learned about networking, which is really what Equus is all about. And so after 20 years of networking, you know, we've been able to bring the message out, and now all of us together are just going to ascend that message to the planet, right? But I started to realize as I was the unit career advisor at the 180th Fighter Wing, you know, I would meet people, get to know them, they'd deploy, they'd come back, and then they would start to struggle. And so that's when I really like honed in, like the military, our veterans need this. And that's, so in 2011, I founded Hooves. And so we help veterans who are struggling with service-connected stress heal, regain control, and return to the lives that they fought to protect. And we do that through a 5-day healing intensive at our farm in Ohio. And we fly veterans in from all over the country, 2 from Canada who fought alongside of us in Afghanistan. And we take them through a holistic process that doesn't just treat the mind, but it treats the body and it treats the soul. And we actually just got a Beamer unit in December, so we're going to incorporate that, and I can't wait to see how that increases results. But it's 5 days now. I keep learning more stuff and adding days, but I promise this is the last day I'm going to add this year. But they go through this process where we call it discovering your human blueprint, because you're not who you were before you joined the military and you got programmed. But you're also not who you were when you were serving in the military. And I love to say, if you don't know who you are, everybody else will tell you who you are. And if that's incongruent with who you really are, you're going to start to beat the crap out of yourself. And that's going to take you to a dark place. So step 1 is, who are you? And I've actually developed these questions, and it's ever evolving, like Alex said yesterday. It's ever evolving. But what I've learned that I think is a value for all people to know is that sometimes when we are figuring out who we are, we're so attached to what we do. And if we can't, so we do this and we assign our worth to what we're doing, and then, oh my gosh, that's been taken away from us. We can't do that anymore. Now I'm going to crumble and fall apart. So I have 7 questions I've developed, and they're not based on what you do, but they take you to moments of your life where you felt really good. And they ask you, in that moment, what were the traits and characteristics that you were leading your life with? How did you feel in that moment? And what do you believe the benefits that were provided to you in that moment are? It's actually, I changed it since you came through. This is new and improved. Because when you know how you want to feel, and you know the benefits that light your heart up, and you know the traits and characteristics that you value, you can plug those into any situation in your life. And it also serves as a barometer to say, is what I'm about to do really congruent with who I am? Or is it not? And so we help people find out who they are. Then we have a bunch of really fun stuff like rage painting and pen crafting. And we go through this like metamorphosis. And then on the last day, we create a new mission and vision for life. And another really cool thing that we've added this year is actually 11 months of follow-on coaching to help people take their mission and vision and actualize it. And without this 11 months, a lot of times, many of the people that come through within 1 year have manifested their life and their mission and vision, because, you know, just getting it on paper is a good start. But we realized that we needed to keep people even more connected. But the people who came through last year, when they took our self-report survey, they reported a 92% reduction in suicidal ideation and a 76% reduction in substance coping. And there was a big survivor's guilt one, and I don't remember the stat right now, so I don't want to say it. But we're getting massive results. We're getting them non-clinically. But what's great about the program as well is we have some people that come and they're in therapy, and then they can go back to therapy, you know, when they're done, and continue to receive that support, but they've had a breakthrough. And so, you know, we love to work with the VA, we love to work with the mental health professionals. We're other programs, you know, I think we all can just support each other, and we are all doing our heart-inspired work, and we're all different, but we're all helping the people. And when we do that together, I think this is how we change the world. I saw the best quote. I'm going to end on this because I'm sure I took up way too much time. I get on a roll. I'm a little passionate. So if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. If you teach a man to fish, you change the world. And I believe that that's what we're all doing. So, thank you.
All right, well, thank you. That was just great working with all these that have the same focus and goal. I went from military to law enforcement, and then my latter part of law enforcement was working with suicide prevention, intervention, and critical incident stress, which would now be more PTSD. So, but I started early in my life working with horses. I was raised on a ranch, so kind of after all that, getting back into horses was a natural kind of organic. I didn't realize it was equine therapy, but I just get on a horse and ride. So it was in military. I graduated high school right during Vietnam, so they said, you need to be married or have good grades to go to college, or you get drafted. So I thought, okay, I'm getting drafted. So, because I had neither one of those, and so I enlisted, and then in the Air Force, it was Air Police when I went in. Now it's security, Air Force security forces, but it's the ground forces for the Air Force. Really, is what it boils down to. And then when I got back from overseas, I would not have told anybody that I was battling suicidal thoughts. I would not have even hinted at it. I went on to become a pilot. I thought, man, anything happens, and it's on your whatever. So, but so I went from that into deep undercover narcotics and into patrol. So, and I was all through that time I was battling that, and then later becoming suicide intervention. And I was battling, so I think it kind of helped in a way, but because you're kind of battling the same things. Once suicide becomes a reasonable alternative, once it starts making sense as the best option, it really is this trap. I don't know. It's so difficult to kind of get out of it. But to some of the points here, like the follow-up stuff. When we developed critical incident stress debriefing, we'd get all the first responders together, and you meet in a room. You have coffee and donuts and a social worker, psychologist, and you have Kleenexes, and then you say, okay, let's all talk about our feelings. And it's just a weird environment because people don't talk. And so what I found, we would call it in law enforcement Signal 42. So I'd get a call maybe a month later. Late at night, hey man, can you 42, whatever, get out there not knowing what the guy wanted to talk about and say, I can't sleep at night, I'm dealing with this, I'm dealing with that. So I found that it was the sterile stuff and just the talking early on typically doesn't work because they don't know how they feel. And so the same with military, you can carry that and you can't really put something to the feeling. So horses, so now I work with Base Camp for Veterans, and one of the things I think is great about these panels is we can kind of cross-pollinate and go, there's some great ideas there. We work with 4 veterans and their families in tents for 1 full week. Have horses included in the therapeutic process. They'll be riding. We'll take a wild horse. I'll work with the veteran, and we'll train a wild horse as far as we can get, and they bond with them. And you just have these breakthrough moments where, and once somebody starts crying, I'm lost. I'm going to cry. Okay, and I used to not be that way. So I don't know. It's in a real macho crying way, I'm sure. But you start seeing these breakthroughs, and then the connecting with the horse and just hugging. It really it's not something you go, oh, that's kind of a neat little thing. There's something significant that happens when you have those breakthrough moments. So work with first responders, with some police departments. I was with Arlington Police Department, Dallas, Fort Worth area, and then Scottsdale Police Department in Arizona, and just kind of the follow-up is just so important. One of the nice things about having horses involved, they can come back out and have those connections, and it's much more impactful than just talking through it. I don't know. I can't explain it other than when it happens, you go, wow, that's pretty amazing. So anyway, I'll pass it on to.
Hello, I'm Christy Schramm, the CEO and co-founder of Veterans Rescue Ranch. I'm an Army veteran, my husband's an Army veteran, and our 2 older kids are currently serving. So when we say that this is a deeply personal mission, what we mean is we will provide a safe space, a healing space for the veteran community, which includes our kids. We open up our home to veterans. We also rescue animals. And I do work for Mount Carmel Veteran Service Center. I work in the same office as the county VSO. So I'm known as the Veterans Resource Officer. He takes care of claims and navigating VA benefits, while I take care of all the stuff that the VA doesn't cover. And this is my husband, Jeffrey.
As she said, Jeff Schramm, I am the operations officer of Veterans Rescue Ranch. And by chance, we moved into a great community here in Colorado up in West Cliff. And it was by chance that we have the second largest per capita population of veterans in the state. And so while we had moved out here with the intention to help veterans, we are in a great place to do so. We have 75 acres. We have beautiful mountain views of the Sangres. And as my wife said, we are sharing our home with veterans. We are bringing them out to discover alternative healing through equine-assisted therapy, through drum circles, yoga, and just hiking, Mission Wolf. There's so many things that we have available to us that we can be another piece of the pie in helping veterans, another resource that veterans desperately need. As my wife said, I'm an Army veteran, served 2 combat tours. As others on this panel, I myself am a suicide survivor, meaning in 2004, I thought I had no other option. And so I attempted to take my life, and luckily I was unsuccessful. Because obviously there are other plans for me. That was in 2004. I spent probably a decade and a half trying to discover the tools that I needed to heal, because suicidal ideation is a struggle every day that veterans have to overcome. And if you don't have the tools to do it, it becomes a reality. I've lost a lot of veterans to suicide, and it just gets to a point that it's too much. Traditional therapy, it never worked for me. Maybe what was the term you said?
Treatment resistant.
Treatment resistant. Nobody ever told me that, but I just don't believe that. I think there's a treatment for everybody.
Absolutely.
In 2019, I found an organization, Canines for Warriors, to apply to get a service dog. Unfortunately, it was the start of COVID, so I was looking at a 4-year waiting period. Luckily, it ended up only being just under 3 years. And Ace does well getting me out of bed, getting me out of the house, but I can tell you, when I go out and I work with my horses, it is just, I don't know, it is such a great feeling, gives me a purpose, and all I can think is, how can we not share this with other veterans? Our programs are free, and if veterans have trouble with transportation and travel, because we look for veterans nationwide that are struggling with PTSD, military sexual trauma, traumatic brain injuries. And so we will cover all that. And that's the biggest thing that I've seen in other organizations that I think brings a peace of mind to the veterans that allows them to really go head on into those therapies, is not having to worry about the financial aspects on all that comes along with being away from their families and things like that. And I think that's a good introduction.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
If I could interrupt for a moment. So what's your first name? Christy. So I owe Christy an apology. So my generation, like during Vietnam, there weren't very many women. So I reach over and go, hey man, were you in the, yeah, so yeah, okay, well, it's, that's really my error, and I can't blame it totally on generation. It may just be me. But anyway, so thank you for your service, and some of the last intensive we did, we had three men and one woman in the intensive, and so sometimes you get overlooked. Okay, so that's it.
Yeah, and to that point, actually, in our, we have a documentary coming out on April 6th, and one of the women, she's a Navy veteran in our healing intensive that we filmed, and we were asking all the veterans if they would send us pictures of themselves that we could include in the documentary. She was on the cover of the Navy Times with she was leading I don't know what they call it in the Navy, they call it a flight in the Air Force, but a group of women in formation, and the caption underneath was, "Too many women, question mark?" It's in our film. The Navy was questioning if they were allowing too many women to participate.
So with
20
that,
years ago.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I would actually like to introduce some of our colleagues as well, John and Sarah, because they're the parents of a female helicopter pilot, right? She is a Black Hawk pilot. And because we've been talking a lot about military families, we were just talking this morning about the specific stressors that active female military service members are going through. And this is it's a perfect segue, because we're talking about, survivors of military sexual trauma. We're starting a group this year of 4-week intensive groups for military sexual trauma survivors, because like Rainey, like you were saying earlier, and I think Jeff, you said as well, sometimes there's no words. You don't have words sometimes. And so the horses are wonderful for that. So John and Sarah, I'm just going to hand the mic over to you so you can just talk about your daughter a little bit and what she's gone through, if you feel comfortable doing that. Just sharing some of the stressors. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, this was something she was passionate about since she was 5. And so it's her dream. And she had an idea of, how tough it would be. But some of the culture of different units, she served in Illinois, now she serves in Texas. And, she's gotten some, like, as she's met other pilots in different, areas, they're like, wow, you started in that unit. Just the reputation of how toxic certain units are against women, and particularly commanders, to be an officer and a commander and a pilot, and have, some older school pilots and officers that don't believe they belong there. There's a real, almost, scary, intentional move to kind of crush them. And so that's been really, really toxic and damaging, from what we've seen as parents. Yeah.
And let me add a minority as well. And that's another layer there. And it's interesting, as a female, she gathered other females in support as they were going through their training as a way of getting through. So it wasn't even the commanders offering something. It's like, man, we got to get through this. Seers and so forth, all this training and all this, psychological pressure that they have to go through. And for her to get through that and then overcome that and still be a survivor of that, I want to say enough. Maybe there's an acronym there that you guys can come up with that really would help in dealing with that. Hey, it's enough. Too much? No. It's enough. Anyway, thank you.
Oh, we'd love to. Yeah, and just in speaking to, I mean, families of military too, we both come from families of service. And so, I hadn't put words to being an adult child of a veteran, until I heard that phrase from you, Amanda. But that really has been my motivation for the work that I do as a trauma therapist, and understanding top-down therapy doesn't work because that part of your brain is not on. So bottom-up therapy is what you guys are all talking about and what we do, because you don't have words for trauma. I grew up with my dad not sleeping at night. He was a front lines in Korea, and ultimately the only survivor of his unit because of his own mother's suicide. He came back and had to adopt siblings and lost, another sibling to suicide, veteran. We've lost multiple veterans, family members to suicide. And my mom had civilian PTSD and was a suicide survivor. I'm a suicide survivor. So, it impacts all the way through the family. And once one family member has taken their life in that way or has died that way, it becomes a family culture. And we look at, like in my family, 8 generations back in service and suicides. And so it's just profound, the effect that it has on the family.
Yeah, thank you. And I know when we did the panel in Albuquerque, I spoke a little bit to the family piece. One of the things that we started to realize veterans are an underserved population, but there's a micro underserved population in that, and that is adult children of veterans. And so we have actually dedicated one of our retreats. We put on 7 per year from April through October, and one, we call it the spouse, and we've kind of labeled it spouse and caregiver retreat. But we have seen so many adult children of veterans come through that program, and it's the exact same program that the veterans get. It's teaching the same fundamentals, but we originally just opened it to the spouses, and then we were like, wait a minute, we have programs all over the country for youth of veterans, but it's like you turn 18 and you're an adult now, and you can just go to therapy. Never mind that your dad was in Vietnam and, there was violence and all the other things that go along with it. And so we always try to spread that awareness too, that if you're an adult child of a veteran, you have been impacted. And, we provide support, and I would love to encourage, and I think all of us provide family support, but just really looking at those children of veterans that are adults now is critical, I think.
Well, and on that note of family trauma that is handed down, this is also why I'm so passionate about sharing Beamer, because it's a device that can be used in any household, and it's portable. And when you turn on the device, it automatically shifts the autonomic nervous system. And so if you go onto PubMed.gov, which is the National Library of Medicine, you can see the new studies that are showing the correlation between dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system being responsible for suicide ideation. And so if you can catch it early, and when there are not words, to talk through this generational pattern, we have something else that's working with our biology. That's really impressive and powerful, right? And it's something you do every morning and every night. And because we all experience stress and trauma in different levels every day, just being alive, just walking around. Even this wonderful event center brings its own stressors, right? As it does for our horses too, by the way, just to kind of shift over, because we also do equine assisted services. But one of the reasons I'm passionate about sharing Beamer for horses is so the horses are getting the support they need when they are doing their trauma help work, right? They have that same trauma and pain center, and we want to make sure that their autonomic nervous system is regulated and in check, and their physical body as well. But this is truly one of the most powerful technologies available anywhere on the planet. NASA, we just finished a 5-year collaboration with Beamer, putting this technology into the astronauts' undergarments. And that's both for physical and mental and emotional support. And I always say, when you regulate those three pieces, now your spirit comes back to life. And so, when the panel was talking about, those that have served and having those dark moments of, it just takes a single thought, to take an action. This is helping regulate the brain so you can have that quiet pause and then make a different decision, hopefully. So anyway, again, I would just encourage anybody to come over, experience it for yourself. We educate nationally. We hold calls every day of the week with physicians, clinicians, and therapists that will chime in. So tell everybody, come on board, and hopefully get one for your own body and your barn too.
Yeah, and I'm going to say one last thing and then I'm not going to talk anymore, but just to the point of suicidal ideation, I had an observation in helping over 400 veterans who are suicidal with my own experience. I've realized a pattern, and so this is strictly my opinion, but I feel like in every story I've heard, the moment we feel like that which we truly want in life will never be available to us seems to be the moment that we start to want to opt out. And that might be a relationship, that might be a career, or it might just be peace, it might be relief from pain. But the moment that somebody says, this is what I want and I'm never going to have it, that's that pivotal moment. And I think that's something we really try to address in our programming. We work a lot with the transmutation of energy or finding forms of things. And so, I've had a lot of middle of the night calls of like, hey, I'm thinking about taking my life. I'm so glad you called me. What is it right now that you feel you want that will never be available to you? And there's always an immediate answer. And when we can help those people identify that it's the thing, but behind the thing is a desire. And if we can go behind the thing to the desire and say, this is what I'm hearing you want, where do you actually already have that in your life in a different form? It snaps an integration and it kind of fills a void. Absolutely. If you watch our documentary, it actually happens, I don't know if you guys can relate, during introductions. And it shows it in our film where, we see what people say when they get, I didn't want to be here, it was awkward, whatever, and then boom, they're around a table and the first person goes, and then it's like, me too, me too, me too, me too. And then we realize we're all actually totally connected every time.
Yeah, I think it's at different times for different people. That Me Too thing, there's a great organization also in Ohio called Save a Warrior, and that's one of the things they work with veterans and they work with first responders. It's a really unique, super intensive 4-day program, and that's one of the things that they teach people about is to be able to say, me too. And their facilitators say it also when someone says, I've thought about taking my life, or I'm a survivor of military sexual trauma, or I was abused, or my father was a Vietnam veteran. As facilitators and the people who go to the program will also say, me too. And so to see the relief on their faces, like, oh my God, I'm not going to be run out of town on a rail, or someone's not going to put me on a 72-hour hold just because I've said it, right? I've had so many veterans with their horses that said, Lisa was giving us a hard time about all laughing up here and about dark humor, right? But that is often a way in, is that humor, because if we're taking ourselves too seriously, and if we can't use that dark humor sometimes, because if I have had veterans who have come to me and said they were trying to just be comfortable with the therapist, and the therapist was uncomfortable in their skin, and they couldn't handle the dark humor, and they got slammed with a 72-hour hold by making a joke to try to just make their nervous systems comfortable in an office with 4 walls and fluorescent lights. Right? So being able to work with civilian therapists or even, young therapists just out of grad school to be able to say, you got to be able to hang with the dark humor, man. Otherwise, you're sunk with this community. Sunk, especially with law enforcement. I mean, there's, right? And with all of it, there's a time, and then there's a time, right, when that humor gets to be if it's repetitive, right? And they keep joking about, well, I'm just going to take myself off the planet then, or I'm just going to hug myself off a cliff, or that horse and I, Trigger and I, are just going to go hell-bent for leather across that cliff, and we're just going to be done with it. There's a time to go with it, and then there's a time to cock your head and say, talk to me about that. Are we still, where are we at with that? Because they know, and when you learn that trust, when you can joke with them and be real with them and cry and laugh and get with the horses, and if there's a time they're like, I got nothing to say to you today, say, great, go for a walk with a horse. See you in 20 minutes. Kind of look at you and be like, all right, right? Because ultimately, if we ask as counselors, as therapists, as facilitators, as whatever we are, if we go in too quick, just like with a horse, right? When you go in and you're like, you've got an agenda, you're like, all right, horse, I got an hour to teach you this skill, and then we're done. The horse is gonna be like, I don't think so, right? I have found there's a lot of similarities, right, with our veterans, with our youth, with our first responders, to be like, I don't know you like that, I'm not sharing that with you right now. You gotta earn this. So when we can be real and when we can be grounded and when that humor goes too far and we can stop and go, all right, we've been joking about this for a while. I've now heard you say this 7 times in the same 20 minutes. Do we need to talk about this? And when you have earned that trust, right, and they can look you in the eye and be like, nah, no, I really am kidding. Like, and to be able to say, no, we need to talk about this today. Great, then let's talk about it, right? And so there's different ways in. We've been talking about this the last couple days in, is for some people it's art. For some people it's the Beamer. For some people it's yoga. For some people it's hunting. For some people, they're stuck in veteran treatment court and they got an option. That's why I'm so glad there's veteran treatment courts around also, because they're the choices that we make sometimes when we're not in our right mind, literally. Ooh, I see Lisa walking towards us. What's that? Oh, okay, she wants you.
I think Alex is going to draw up your book, you guys, and you guys just continue until the time.
Okay. Cool beans. Anyway, Jeff wants to say something too, so I'm going to pass the mic to him. But that's a great question, because it's that answer is going to be different for different people at different times. And if you're paying attention, you see it. You see it on their faces. You see it in their bodies. You see when they are ready to share or to talk about more. Yeah, Jeff.
And that's what it's all about. It's the tools. Everybody up here provides a different tool. And if you can fill your tool belt with all these tools, you have something every day to get you through that day, to get you off the prescribed medications that no veteran wants to take. Nobody wants to sit down every day and take a handful of pills. I do it. I know other veterans that do it. It makes it worse. But the tools that we have out here are great. The other work that we have to do is getting veterans aware of these tools. We just started our program, we just started a year ago. We moved from Southwest Ohio, left everything, we moved out here and took a chance. And I have learned about so many programs since I've started this. And the fact that they're not well known, it's insane. And so another part of our mission is to build that database of resources. So if I have veterans coming to me and it's not something they need that we can't provide, I can at least give them 5 other places that can. And I've got 5 of them right up here. So, and also the research that Dr. Ellen's doing, she was on our panel yesterday, is, whether she knows it or not, it's going to pave the way for organizations like the VA to start getting involved and getting veterans into programs like equine assisted therapy and get it covered through the VA so that they don't have to worry about those costs. So everybody is doing their part, and we just have to make it more well known and get these tool belts filled so that our veterans feel like they always have another option other than suicide.
Yeah.
You know what I don't see up here is judgment. This is a no judgment panel. And I think that that's huge with veterans, right? Because there's a stigma with mental health. Nobody wants to talk about it. And I think it's because you feel judged. You feel like they don't understand. That's why I love this community here. Appreciate y'all.
We love you, Christy.
Appreciate you.
I used to tell the guys, so in the prison program, we had a number of veterans who they got out and get into drugs, and that led to crime. So, but I would occasionally say, I need you guys to know that at some point when I reach perfection, I'm going to start judging you guys. But until then, we're all just working through this together. So they were pretty safe. But going, with humor, I remember, military, stuff that if somebody else heard that, they would go, "Oh, that's terrible," and if you're there, it's a release. It's kind of, I got called one night. We had 2 officers get shot. It was an armed robbery, and both of them were rushed to the hospital. And so I show up at the hospital. I'm sitting they're like a bed apart. And the banter back and forth between these, you got the suspect is dead, is deceased. You got these 2 guys, and the banter, I thought, I'm looking around, I think, man, if somebody heard this, they would think these guys really have issues. But that's the way, one of the ways you initially deal with it. So anyway, I think that's great that was brought up.
I just wanted to add something too, as we're talking about mental health and wellness, right? We're really talking about the cognitive piece of this. But when I'm educating about Beamer, we use something that's called the iceberg principle. I think probably everybody's aware what that is. But if you draw a triangle, right, and this is the tip of the iceberg, this is the water line. Really, the top that's peeking out is the symptom, right? And sometimes the symptom of suicide ideation is, I don't have another choice. I can't go anywhere else in my life. But if you go below the iceberg, you start looking at what is the root cause, what really is taking that person to the place of feeling that they will never repair again, right? And this is where Beamer is really exceptional, because we have to think about how many injuries are happening in the military environment, right? Whether it's shrapnel wounds, a long-term disability, the pain threshold. When people get on the Beamer, they have an instantaneous shift in their physical body. I'm just going to look to John because he's in the first row. We're not talking about a military one. May I share what you used the Beamer for today? So he had a Beamer session yesterday, and he was complaining about sciatica. This morning he came back in because he said, whoops, I feel a lot better, but I still have some discomfort. And I said, well, let's address it in a different way. And as I was asking, you said it was a 20-year issue. And in an 8-minute session, this is only his second time, he was like, oh my gosh, this is much better. Not fully resolved, but much better, and started feeling warmth in an area that had been impacted. So when we start even fixing the physical wounds from being in combat, that then can help the mental piece. So I don't want to forget how important that integrative process is. And Beamer's beautiful for supporting that.
Mm-hmm. Are there, I think we need to wrap in about 5 minutes, Alex, is that right? And then we'll do a drumming circle. Are there any questions from the audience? Any comments, questions, things you want to throw out? Yeah, Sarah.
I just want to say, I think one of the big gaps that I've seen is active duty military and reserves and National Guard won't say anything because their current service is going to be jeopardized. And especially in certain roles, their careers.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Do you want me to say it? Because, yeah, so the comment was people not saying anything or being afraid to say something because maybe they have a status and they will lose that status. And I can tell you, because I lived that, which is why I ended up in the hospital, and I actually didn't tell my base about the suicide attempt. TRICARE sent a letter to the med group. And I do feel like, and that was, I don't want to say how many years ago, but it was a long time. I feel like we've really progressed a lot. And in my job right now as the Human Resources Director of my wing is to work closely, I can only speak for the Air Guard, but we have now one or two directors of psychological health at every base. And one of the things that we've done, I mean, I can speak to the problem, I can speak to how it's being worked now. one of the things we're working on within our base is we're looking for people in our unit that have had problems. And my old unit did this a couple of years ago, but our public affairs department is great. And they're going in and interviewing people. You know, we had one girl that was hospitalized. We had another guy, he found his brother hanging and turned to alcoholism. And, you know, finding people that were able to save their careers. By all textbook, I should not be in the military right now, because after my attempt, I got a ton of diagnosis, complex PTSD, bipolar disorder, none of which I have now. I've fully healed from them. But at the time, my wing commander took me in his office. And he knew me through horses, because his wife had horses, and we used to show horses together. Normally, you don't know your wing commander at that level, but he said, Amanda, I believe in you, and I don't know what's going on, but I know that you can recover from this. And he put me in a non-deployable spot. He said, you have 2 years. I'm going to put you in this spot. I know you're going to get it together. I know that that doesn't happen for a lot of people, but I do know that in my current wing commander is one of the most amazing men ever. Like, he's such an advocate, and he puts our people first. So in the Air Force, it is known. We just got a visit from Chief Bass, who is the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force active duty. She came to our wing. And it is being talked about, and there is an awareness of it. And we actually have quite a few I know quite a few people that are on ADHD medication, antidepressants, and I think, if you carry a weapon or if you're in a fly status, and you're struggling, you may temporarily be taken off status. But I feel like from the Air Guard perspective, like, it's not an end-all, be-all, and there are people that have struggled. I mean, look, let's be real. Do any of you really know anybody who hasn't struggled? I've never met a person, right? But I think when people do share their stories, and again, there's so much power in story, and story is a double-edged sword, right? Because your story is important. It's part of who you are. If you're running your story, it can literally kill you. But if you're sharing your story from a place of inspiration, it can bring healing. And so I think it's just going to take more people who have come forward and not lost things to speak up about it. And I think that's what we're doing on this panel. But to say, like, hey, listen, I don't know what would have happened, because I didn't plan to say anything, but I got exposed. And that was over 10 years ago. And I'm, I have a 21-year career. So I just think we have to talk about it more.
Totally, I agree 100%. I mean, how can you not agree with that? We have to open the lines of communication. Isn't that the answer to everything? One of the other things that we've found that we're working with, that we've been able to assist people with, is because the modality that's at the root of the equine-assisted trauma releasement and horse-guided hypnotherapy is a modality called depth hypnosis. And that particular modality has been proven with actual scientific research that, in addition to remarkably diminishing feelings of anxiety and depression and PTSD symptoms, it increases feelings of wellness and feelings of well-being. And you can anyone can decide to go to something that improves the way they feel. It doesn't get judged the same way as therapy gets considered these days. And so that's a way that we found that we've been able to help treat people.
That is such a great point. Thank you.
We can help without anybody. In the meantime, as everyone becomes recognized, as the lines of communication continue to grow, we can be helping in the meantime.
Absolutely.
And then if you guys are all okay, we're at like 11:10 or 11:11 or some magical number or something like that. I'd like to offer a healing drumming briefly. And so all that I'm going to drum, and all that we need to do is just, if you would like to, go ahead and verbalize, actually utter, speak, even if it's a whisper, the name of someone you know who needs healing, their first and last name or whatever element of their name that you know, and hold them in your mind. You don't have to do just one person, but the idea is that the vibration that we're causing, we move the air, we move the sound waves, we affect change with our intentions. They prove that just by looking at a particle, you change the outcome. And so whatever we hold in our minds, we're going to be able to at least give some power to. So think, as I get my drum out, think right now about who you might like to just think of having some healing. And if it's yourself, if it's somebody who's passed on, just bring them to mind, utter them quietly, scream out their name, whatever you want to do, but let's cause some vibrational change here.
Great. Thanks, Al. Do you want to keep the microphone?
No, I can't.
Okay.
And anybody else? I have a rattle additionally. Does anybody want a rattle?
Do you want to rattle?
And this, if you've not heard of that book, that's one of the best ones.
Off. And so with that, I think that's a wrap. Thank you, Alex. That was beautiful. If anyone has any questions, please come up and talk with us after the panel. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
we're not using it. I'm trying to turn it off.
Hello. Oh, that would have been fun. We're here for the 11:30 screening of The Rescued Hearts documentary trailer, their 20-minute trailer. And our filmmakers are both here, so as soon as the trailer runs, we're going to have the ladies come up, and then we'll have a few guests who are here with them. And George will be up here, he's on his way. And so we'll have the guest speakers. I see it. I'll get it up here so it's here. George can get the shorty chair. All right, well, I'm gonna see if I can get this started, and we'll watch the movie. Anyone needing to take seats, please take your seats, and we'll start the film.